Hi, everybody. Welcome to class today. All right, before we get started, let's see those emojis. Who's happy? Who needs coffee? Who stayed up too late watching Netflix or studying? All right, awesome. Good. All right, so we are moving into putting it all together for our HACCP plan. So I am going to bring up my screen. I want everybody today to have your screens on and want to see all your faces, and we're going to get started. So cameras on. Our objectives: apply the principles of food safety and sanitation to storage, production, and service of food, and develop a plan to minimize vulnerabilities in the food chain supply. These are two competencies that you need to meet in order to sit for your RD exam. Highly important in food service operations, as you know. Overview of today's class. We're going to put our thinking caps on and solve a foodborne illness. We're going to review the steps of HACCP. We're going to view a completed critical control point. We're also going to work on, as a group, in groups, developing a plan for a critical control point. Your group's gonna present to the class, and then independently, I'm gonna let your theme meal groups work on your CCPs so you can get rolling with those. So what you're gonna need today: your HACCP template, your supporting materials, and I want you to go ahead and check the chat right now. I'm chatting over the link to the OneDrive if you don't have those handy. Okay, what's our mystery? So I want you to put on your thinking caps here. And in early 1993, a large number of foodborne illness cases were diagnosed in and around the Washington state area. And by January 15th, over 150 people were sick, most of them children. One child had died. What most of the people had in common was they had eaten hamburgers from Jack in the Box. The final number of laboratory confirmed cases of the foodborne illness were 538, although 708 people had reported symptoms. Symptoms were headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, bloody diarrhea, cramps, and a few of the children actually had hemolytic uremic syndrome. Now, not all of those who consumed the burgers actually became ill. I am going to do a poll right now, so I want you to stop. I want you to think about it here for a minute. Think about those clues I have up on the screen for you. And here's your poll. And let's see. What bacteria do you think caused the food illness outbreak? Look at those clues. Think about it for a minute. Okay. I'm going to give you to a count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Let me end that poll. And looks like, wow, overwhelming E. coli. You are right. I had one people say salmonella. And so I think salmonella is probably the other well-known foodborne illness, so not a bad answer. The only thing about that one is that the hemolytic uremic syndrome is not typically associated with salmonella. So E. coli. And so here was a picture out of a newspaper about this outbreak. And if you think about it, think about some of those. This was a highly publicized foodborne illness outbreak, and you'll see those quite often. Can you remember one? Haley. Yes, Chipotle. Exactly. And Chipotle lived to tell, right? They are still standing in a restaurant operation today. Some places haven't always been so lucky. But you'll see you'll have foodborne illness outbreaks or things that test for bacteria. And as a food service operator, you will get notifications from manufacturers to go and look. Like they've sophisticated systems to track who bought the product, and then they'll tell you what the numbers are, and you have to go pull those, throw those away, and you'll get a credit for them. Highly important to keep your customers safe, to pay attention to those, and just pay attention to the news for your own selves at home. I know even Giant Food Stores knows if you bought something, they will call you and tell you if it's been recalled. Okay. So those HACCP principles, we've been going over that's that systematic approach to keeping our customers safe, to identify, evaluate, and control those food safety hazards that you have in your food service operations. So we're going to run down through the 7 principles just as a review to get before we move into looking at a completed critical control point on a hazard analysis plan. So first we put our team together and then we conduct a hazard analysis. And what are we looking for? That's right. Biological, chemical, anybody else? Mary? Yes, physical. Exactly. Awesome. And then we move on to determine those critical control points, or where is this possibly going to be happening in our food service facility? So just shout them out as you know them. Receiving, cooking, storing, service. You got them all. You got them. And there's many more, right? So that's not all of them, but there's many more. Those are great examples. Thank you. And then we establish those critical limits. And so that's where we decide at what the minimum value is that these hazards can be prevented, eliminated, or reduced. So that might be time and temperature. Finally, we establish monitoring procedures. So who's going to monitor this and how do they monitor it and what should be monitored? And so as a team, as your HACCP team, you will, for those foods identified, you will establish who monitors those. And then what are the corrective actions? So sometimes we can't avoid these things happening in our food service facility, but that is what this plan is for. What happens if something does happen then too? What do we do? So we try to prevent it. If it happens, if you don't get it to the cooking temp, you simply cook it until it gets to the temp. If you did not cool it down correctly, then you may have to throw the product away, etc. Those are corrective actions. And you establish verification procedures who's overseeing this whole operation, this whole HACCP plan. And typically that is a higher level person in the organization, in your kitchen. So a shift manager, a manager, a chef, something like that. And then establish record keeping and documentation. So what does that mean? Can anybody tell me? Yes, correct. So that is when you have policies, you follow your policy for how you keep your records. Exactly. You'll have many food service evaluations from the outside, from the Department of Health, from if you're in a hospital, Joint Commission. And if you don't have it and you haven't documented it, then it didn't happen. Also, heaven forbid there is a foodborne outbreak, then you need to have that documentation to show what you've done to prevent that. It may not be your fault, right? In the case of Jack in the Box, it happened at a couple restaurants, so they think it might have been the manufacturer, all kinds of lawsuits. We don't want to get into that. We certainly first and foremost want to keep everybody safe. So you need those logs. All right, so we are going to work on a plan, a HACCP plan for ground beef, for the beef that those people were eating at Jack in the Box. And so we're going to move over to the OneDrive folder. So I'll give you a second to click in your chat to that OneDrive folder and open it up. Be fun. It's the morning. It'd be fun to talk about something else other than ground beef, wouldn't it? All right. So you've got your HACCP document open. I want you to open your HACCP template. We can all work on this in the same time because we're in the shared drive. Your implementation plan and your development guide. So have all those handy. You're going to need them you're going to work on doing a critical control point in your group as practice and present to the rest of the class after this. But first, I want to go through and show you just how we work on this, okay? So I have, for ground beef, I have done cooking and I've done part of storage. So we're going to finish storage and our critical limit. We've looked at storage practices, the inventory, first in, first out, cross-contamination. What else do we need? Temperature. Excellent. Does somebody want to be my typer? Okay. Thank you, Sierra. So 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Awesome. Now, what are we going to monitor? Like, what are we going to monitor? We're going to monitor the temp of the fridge. It's storage, right? So we're going to look at the temp of the fridge. And you can just write kind of slang in here to do it fast if you'd like. That's okay. All right. And then how are we going to do that? What's our thermometer? Right, it's the walk-in thermometer. So that's what we're going to use to monitor the temperature. All right, so a walk-in thermometer. And we're also going to use the document log too, right? We're going to document that on the log. And what's our frequency? Yeah, 1 time per day is enough. Some places will have it twice a day. So just depends on your operation. So 2 times a day, maybe in the morning and the evening, or maybe once in the morning. And look, I already left this filled in. I gave it away. The AM cook. So that might be who could possibly do it. And then who else if we do it twice a day? Maybe the PM cook. Awesome. Great. What if our temperature is out of, if it's above 41? What do we do? Out of range. Okay, we might recheck the temperature. I think that's a good first step. We would maybe wait 15 minutes and recheck the temp. In the meantime, we would definitely keep the door on the door closed on the refrigerator. Door closed. Excellent. What if you recheck the temp and it is not at the right temperature? Yep, you're going to report it to the manager. That is absolutely right. What else would you need to do? Call maintenance. I absolutely. That's going to be your next step. If you are keeping the door closed, you're rechecking the temp, you report it to the manager and call maintenance. Definitely 100%. Great job. And then we want to write all all these actions down, right? So we're going to write it in the log. Log it. Important. Excellent. Good. So verification, our shift manager is always going to look at the logs every day and make sure that the documentation has been completed. Why? Because if it wasn't documented, it wasn't done. Very important to remember, okay? Do you think there's any other verification procedures we might do on a refrigerator? Think about that for a minute. Think about who we called to come fix it. Maintenance, yeah. What do you think maintenance does? Think about your own sites that you're at right now for experiential learning. Anybody have any ideas? Ashley, yes. Yes, maintenance, right? You have maintenance checks. So that is another verification. So you have twofold verification there. And then record keeping. What did we say about record keeping? Who answered that? I think that was Haley answered it. Haley, you want to? Yeah, policies, right? So you have a policy that you need to follow. And of how long you keep that documentation. And it is what usually, anybody remember? 1 to 2 years. 1 to 2 years. Excellent. I'm sorry. Excellent there. Yeah, 1 to 2 years. So you will keep that on file because if you don't have that information, that it didn't happen. All right. So this is, and then you'll see I did storage practice for cross-contamination already and storage practice for first in, first out. And that's to prevent expired foods. And then I went ahead and I did a cooking one for you too. So you have several examples here in this document. And then we're going to work on, we're going to move next into our group work. So everybody keep that template up.